I just did. Okay, everybody, welcome. We wanted to make sure that we're recording, so anybody that wasn't at our live forum or here today with us would be able to watch and learn a little bit about UPK and the role of UTK within that. So welcome this afternoon. Thanks for joining Jen and I. We're so excited to be able to talk to you a little bit about this. We feel like we are in this day in and day out, and there are many of you that are a little bit confused about what's going on. And I would say that this is one of those system changes where it's all not worked out yet. As a matter of fact, we had some questions from our live forum that we've sent to the state that kind of stumped them a little bit. So I think we're all learning together, but we're so happy that you're here today. So we'll be able to share with you what we know so far. Great. Yeah. Go to the next one. Go to the next slide. Okay, so we have an agenda for today. We're going to be done within the hour. And so first thing up for me is let's just set the groundwork, right? Let's just talk about where we're at for a second. So before we dive into all the definitions and what the dates are and what the certifications are that you need and what a TK classroom is going to look like and all of those things, let's just set the groundwork for a second that we are talking about mainly TK today. And when we talk about TK, we're talking about little kids that have only been on the earth for 4 years, 4-year-olds. And so oftentimes one of the things that we think happens to us, and one of the things that might happen to you, is we get wrapped up in all of the details and we forget to get grounded back to the fact of we are talking about pulling a bunch of 4-year-olds into a classroom, and what that needs to look like developmentally is going to be different than what we might start to think about initially in our heads. So let's just keep that as the base of our conversation as we start to dive in. So I'm going to hand it over to Jen.
All right. Good afternoon. If you haven't already, please go ahead and enter your name, your school or organization, and the grade level that you teach into the chat. It's one of the ways that we're going to collect sign-ins today. And we're going to start with some definitions. So I'm going to be using, actually, Joy and I are both going to be using a lot of acronyms in this webinar. So I want to make sure that when we use them, you at least have some background of what we're talking about. So one of the ones that's pretty ubiquitous is CSPP. That stands for California State Preschool, and it's the largest publicly funded state preschool program in the state. We also have TK or UTK. We use them interchangeably. This is transitional kindergarten or universal transitional kindergarten. And this really is about that first year of a 2-year kindergarten program that serves 4-year-olds. When we talk about UPK, we're talking about universal pre-kindergarten. And this is the all of the options that exist before kindergarten. It's a mixed delivery system, and it includes all of the options that a family would have prior to entering, say, kindergarten. But in this case, UPK will include transitional kindergarten. You may also hear us talk about P3 or P3 alignment, and that is the preschool through 3rd grade alignment that is happening through some efforts at CDE and locally here to really make sure that we are aligning what's happening with children and families from preschool through 3rd grade, so that they're really set, children and students are really set on a trajectory for learning. And then we're going to talk about ELOP. ELOP is ELOP, and that is the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program. And this really is about the extended hours and extended days that help to make up the universal pre-kindergarten. It includes before school, after school, summer sessions, inter sessions, and there are some requirements about ELOP in the UPK world. So let's talk a little bit about how it works. We have Universal Transitional Kindergarten, and this is the only program that must serve any 4-year-old who wants to enroll. This is what we're talking about as the first year of a 2-year kindergarten program. It's the elementary schools, the schools that are probably already doing TK, who must offer this, and they must serve any 4-year-old in their districts. And when we talk about districts or LEAs, I'm really talking about districts and charters. I want to make that clear. Sometimes I'll say districts, and that's just my shorthand for districts and charters, but I'll try to say LEAs. So UTK is the only one that has to serve 4-year-olds. When we talk about UPK, we're talking about, like I said, that mixed delivery system. So that's going to include your Head Start. It's going to include CSPP. It's going to include private preschools. It's going to include other preschools. And all of that together is UTK. And then UPK is a part and a system of P3. It's connecting that whole UPK world that we're talking about with kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade. And if I could ask everybody to just take a look and see if they're muted, that would be awesome. This is just another way of showing you kind of what all the parts and pieces are when we're talking about UPK. All of the boxes along the bottom under the umbrella. So the umbrella is UPK. All of the boxes are those circles I just showed you. These are basically all the circles that there are. So let's talk about where this came from. So California has a master plan for early education that was being developed in the late 2019, early 2020, and it was actually released in December 2020. But what happened earlier in 2020? Does anybody remember? Oh yeah. What I want you to know is this is already in the works, but then we got COVID. Well, hopefully we all didn't get COVID, but COVID became a part of our world, and this really became this transformational period where the state could take what work they were already doing with the California Master Plan for Early Education and use COVID as a way to refocus and realign. And really, we were able to understand in a way that we never had, that the education community never really had collectively before, that schools are a place for, it's more than just classrooms, it's more than just teachers, it's a place for so much more. And that there is a connection between the learning that happens in schools and in classrooms and the long-term effects, the behavioral, social, emotional, financial, health effects that are connected to that. And so California started to invest in this whole child, whole family model. And really what they were able to demonstrate, what we know from research, right, is that there are some factors that are important in predicting academic success for students. And these 4 rise to the top: mental health, early learning, socioeconomic factors, and physical well-being. And so the state's investments were around that whole child, whole family idea. They made investments in universal pre-kindergarten, investments in ELOP, investments in meal programs, investments in the California Community Schools Partnership, other behavioral health investments, lots of investments, both in 2021, 2022, moving forward in the whole child, whole family model. And so this slide, I hope that a lot of you here understand that early learning matters. And one of the focuses on universal pre-kindergarten at that 3- and 4-year-old stage is because of the importance of those early years in a child's brain development and in their preparation for school and for a life of learning. Can they see I don't know if you can see you can see it, great. So this section right here, that children's learning is best promoted through a strengths-based, play-based, approach to joyful, engaged learning that supports their emotional, social, cognitive, and language development is really what we're talking about when we're going to talk about the key aspects of UTK and what is its relationship to kindergarten and what is its relationship to preschool. So in this diagram, what you see is that we have this big circle representing UTK, and that's the major effort that's happening right now. And we have it almost as a Venn diagram with preschool, connected, overlapping. These are strongly connected. Kindergarten is close and it's right there, but it's not, it maybe could be touching the bubble here on the side, but the point is that with this realignment and refocus, there is an opportunity here to take what we know about how 4-year-olds learn and really realign transitional kindergarten to be more like preschool than it is like kindergarten. That's strengths-based, it's play-based. So in a nutshell, some of the changes that are happening from the current TK program to UTK, to Universal TK, really fall around 4 categories. And those 4 categories are ratio, eligibility, CSPP and how CSPP supports it, and staffing qualifications. This is a slide, you'll get access to the slides if you haven't already. But I'm going to be going through these in detail. So let's talk about teacher qualifications first. So the teacher qualifications for a TK teacher is that any teacher who is first assigned to a TK classroom after July 1st, 2015 must have 24 units of early childhood education or early childhood development, or some combination of both. Or if they don't have those school units, they can have professional experience. So this is experience in a classroom setting with preschool age students that is comparable to those 24 units. Alternatively, they can have a child development permit. So this is something that's issued by the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, and it's one or the other. So you see the little books stacked on top of each other. You don't have to read the whole trilogy, one or the other. So let's talk a little bit about ratios, staffing, hours, kind of how is this going to roll out? How does this look? In the school year that's coming up in 22-23, all of the age eligible 4-year-olds who are in a classroom will be subject to a 24 students to 1 classroom ratio and with a lead teacher and a second adult. Transitional kindergarten has to be at least 3 hours a day for 180 days a year. And their districts are no longer required to offer their TK hours or minutes the same as K. So that's a change as well. So some LEAs in our community have been offering full day TK. They've been offering maybe 3.5 hour, 4 hour TK, and with the addition of students and with the changes they can take this opportunity to adjust the program if they want to. The ratio is going to change in classrooms. In 22-23, the ratio will be 1 to 12. So for every 12 4-year-olds, there has to be 1 teacher. And we just saw that slide where it was 1 credentialed teacher and one other adult, qualified adult, like an instructional age. But in 2023, if the funding is appropriated by the legislature, they are talking about having that ratio be reduced to 1 and 10. So you still would have a classroom with 24 students in 1 space, but the ratio would be 1 to 10. So what does that mean for extended learning opportunities? So this is the ELOP program. And ELOP, the idea behind the ELOP program is that we want families to have access to care that encompasses a 9-hour day. Think a working family, right? If you're a mom trying to get your 4-year-old to and from preschool, or in this case TK, right, or a dad, that 9 hours is helpful, so that and that can include the instructional minutes. So between the TK classroom and the extended learning opportunities, that's enough to make a 9-hour day. And then an additional 30 days of intercession time, which could be, over breaks, it could be over the summer, but there just has to be some of that intercession days. So here's a little bit of information about kind of what that looks like. I realize we may not have a lot of after school folks in our audience, but I think we have at least one. And so this is what that looks like. So right now, the way that it is that the classroom doesn't really have a size limit, so many children per the space, but there's going to be ratios, and the ratios are if there's even one TK child in the after school setting, the ratio becomes 1 to 10. So, and the instructional aides have to meet those minimum qualifications that are set. So let's talk about this. So the ELOP must be offered to 100% of the unduplicated pupils who are enrolled TK through 6th grade. And the LEA, so they offer it, they have to provide it to 50% of the unduplicated pupils enrolled in TK through 6. And then there's a little caveat about, well, if your unduplicated count is over 80%, then you have to provide it to 100% of the students who qualify. Those are things that probably your district folks and administrators are thinking about right now. This just shows you what I had alluded to earlier, 9 hours a day, including the instructional time. The school has to provide, the LEA has to provide up to 9 hours a day for 210 days a year. Here's the ratios. I went through all that already. Okay, this is just what I want you to see is options that are out there. So when we think about 4-year-olds, they don't have to go to TK. It's the one, even though all of the LEAs are required to offer it, parents don't have to send their 4-year-old. It's not compulsory. They can choose whatever environment they think is best for their 4-year-old. They can have their 4-year-old home with them. They can send them to Head Start. They can go to CSPP. You get the idea. They can go wherever they want to. But let's just presume that if we're looking at options between TK and preschool, what we see here is that a TK classroom might be one, it would be how it looks. So you might have 24 students and you'd have a credentialed teacher and a classified assistant. Whereas the same preschool, you might have 1 to 24, but the ratio here because it's a mixed, it would be mixed and it would have CSPP children in it, the ratio would be 1 to 8. And that would be, so with 24, we need 3 adults, and that would be a CDP teacher and a CDP assistant teacher. Two. Joy's saying 2. And she's right, because it was right there on the slide. So that kind of compared one classroom style to another. What we also want you to know is there are so many staffing options that can go with these new requirements. And so a TK class could be 1 teacher and 12 students. A TK class could be a teacher and a paraprofessional to 24 students. Could be the teacher and the paraprofessional to 24 students in the morning and 24 students in the afternoon. You could blend and have a TK and CSPP classroom together, adhere to the higher ratio, and serve the 24 kids. So there's options here for all schools, for whether you're a school that is expecting hundreds of TK students or you're a school that's expecting 4 TK students. Lots of options for how to staff those classrooms. So the state has outlined kind of how this is going to roll out. How are we going to get to UTK? Well, in 21-22, the year that we're finishing up right now, there's really no ratios in terms of the adults in the room. The class size just is 24 and and a child's 5th birthday needs to occur between September 2nd and December 2nd. For this upcoming school year, that is going to increase. That age eligibility is going to increase. Any child who turns 5 between September 2nd and February 2nd is eligible for transitional kindergarten. The class size, there now becomes a ratio 1 to 12. And still the class size is preferably on average 24 students to a class. In 23-24, that window expands just a little bit more. We go September 2nd to April 2nd for the child's 5th birthday. And also in that year is when the teachers have to have the minimum qualifications include those early childhood education and early childhood development units. And then, as I said before, the ratio is the legislature, if the legislature approves, CDE wants that ratio to drop down, because we're talking about 4-year-olds, drop down to 1 to 10. In 24-25, all of the details are the same as the year before, except that age is now expands out. The months now widen, and any child who turns 5 between September 2nd and June 2nd. And then by 25-26, that's when we have true universal TK, Universal Transitional Kindergarten. So any child who is 4 on or before September 1st is eligible for transitional kindergarten. Here is another way of looking at just pulling out kind of how does it fall for children's birthdays, and what if they're on that cusp, right? When you think about when transitional kindergarten first came down the pike, it was because the age limit, the age eligibility for kindergarten changed. And so that's what we have right here in 21-22, where the existing transitional kindergarten is if the 5th birthday fell between September 2nd and December 3rd, that's transitional kinder. That would be eligible for transitional kindergarten. In 22-23, that extends. We talked about that. 23-24. What I want you to see here is this ETK. ETK is early admittance transitional kindergarten. And so this is at the school's discretion, at the charter's discretion, taking a child whose birthday falls in 22-23 between February and June, in 23-24 between April and June, and so on for 24-25. At the discretion, they can take the child at the beginning of the year. They just won't be able to get ADA until the child reaches their 5th birthday. And then of course, in 25-26, we're gonna have transitional kindergarten for any child who turns 4, I'm getting my 5s and my 4s mixed up, 4 by September 1st. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody want to? I see we got a chat. I don't know. Oh, it was Joy. Any questions? You can feel free to unmute and ask your question if you'd like.
Joy, I got a question for you, or Jen. You had said that the after-school ratio is 10-1 if there's a TK present. Is that correct?
Well, it's once the ratio becomes,
or I guess 12. Is it 12-1 now? Or
you know, Rob, let me look that up and I'll let you know. I borrowed those slides from Shasta, no, not Shasta, from Santa Clara, but I think it is 1 to 10. Like as if there's even one TK student in there, you have that ratio for the TKers is 1 to 10.
So
Joy, it sounds like Joy might want to weigh in here.
So this is Kate, and I'm expanded learning at SCOE. And what I was going to just ask kind of a clarifying question on what Rob had said. So if you have a group of 30 kids, so our ratio currently is 20-1. And if we have a group of 30 kids, we can have 2 staff, 1 in the 20-1, as long as if we have fewer than 10 TKs, that group could be the 10 to 1 or 12 to 1. Is that accurate?
Kate, I am so sorry. I need to ask you to repeat your question. We had a technical equipment malfunction over here. Joy's now at my computer, which means she needs this to hear you.
You can just take it off now.
Or I guess I could take it off. Okay.
So currently in our after school programs, we have a 20 to 1 ratio. And this, so I'm just trying to understand if we had, if TK is a 1 to 12, we could, in theory, have 30 kids together with 2 staff, as long as we have 12 or fewer TK students.
Sorry, can you say that one more time, please, Kate?
Kate, we weren't ready for you to start talking so fast.
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you now.
Okay.
We couldn't before was the problem.
So currently in our after school programs, we have a 20 to 1 ratio. And so if you put a TK student into that mix, we could, in theory, have 32 kids with 2 staff, because one staff could technically be in the 1 to 12, where the other could be 1 to 20.
The TKs have to be 1 to 10, but you know, it's a technicality. I do get the sense, you know, I feel like we keep getting this question, you know, could we take those K to 6th grades and make sure that they're only 1 to 20 is what you're saying, Kate, but then make sure that our ratios for our TKers, that make sure that they're only 1 to 10. I actually think it's probably something that we need to put back to the state. We have many questions on our list that we take to the weekly office hours, and so we'll add that one on there. So far, my worry is those questions have been coming back with the most restrictive answer, meaning that once you put a TKer in there, it's going to go down to that lowest ratio. Equally so, if we put preschoolers in there, it's going to go down to that lower ratio. So let us propose that back to the state and make sure that that still flies, and then we'll come back to you all with the answer to that.
Thank you.
And then I have a follow-up to Kate's follow-up to mine.
Sure, Rob.
So is this after-school ratio for TK part of the ELOP, or is this part of the UTK? Because the ELOP, they're saying they're going to give us a hold harmless next year. So does that mean that next year we have a little leeway with this ratio after school?
That's our understanding, yes.
Okay, so we have to work towards that, but we don't actually have to have it implemented next year.
So the first answer is yes, this is part of ELOP part, and then we also understand it to be hold harmless next year.
Thank you.
And no maximum group size for ELOP, right?
Not that I've seen.
No.
Okay.
Kate, do you know of any maximum group size?
So many of our programs are combined with our existing ACES programs, which is a 20 to 1. And I know that whenever we combine funds, we have to go with the most restrictive. So we couldn't go higher than 20 to 1 while using ACES and ELOP funds combined. I don't know specifically about ELOP funds on their own.
I have a feeling that that's the answer that we're going to get back with the TK and ELOP, but we're sure going to put that question to them to make sure.
I have a quick question about the after school. Do you have to be qualified with any of the ECE units or anything?
So my understanding, just from what Jen was saying, is that by 23-24, everyone, even in expanded learning or after school, is going to have those minimum qualifications, but that we are not held to those qualifications until that time.
Okay, thank you.
And that's 2025.
526, yes.
Oh, I wrote 23-24 was when we had to have the minimum qualifications for the education, the
For
ECE.
ELOP,
No, that's for the TK,
that's for
the
the
credentialed
TK
teachers who want to teach TK.
I think I mixed up two questions. The teachers have to have their qualifications right now by August 1st, 2023. I think I got confused with the after school question and the teacher qualification question.
So then to clarify, after
Sorry.
school, sorry, but after school, I'm not going to be staffing it with a teacher. I'm going to be staffing that with probably classified. That person does not have to have ECE units. Is that correct? Again, this is after school.
They have to.
Well, so what Joy's looking at something in front of her right now. We don't think so, but we're going to go find out.
Okay.
Yeah. And you shouldn't, and just so you know, here we are helping you all know what we know. But just like we said before, every single time we do this, we have just another detailed question. And so we just keep taking them. And I'm going to say the state's been about half and half. About half the questions that we take to them, they have the answer back. And about half of them, they're having to decide on what those answers are. So we'll take these to make sure what the answers are from the state, and then we'll make sure that we get these right back to your group.
And then again, just to clarify, during classroom time, I got a teacher who has the ECE units, but my second adult, probably a paraprofessional, does not have to have ECE units as
That's
long as
correct.
the teacher does. Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
All right. We're
Thanks,
good.
Rob. That was my other question. So thank you.
Sorry,
That's
Lisa. I
correct.
took it from you. I think that was
That's
Lisa.
correct.
All right. Thanks for bearing with us. Like, you know, we're just a couple feet ahead on this path, or maybe a couple yards ahead on this path. So we're sharing what we know. Let's move on to other aspects. If you guys have,
Sorry, Jen, can I ask one more question? Unrelated.
your time is up.
I think it's a quick one because
Okay.
we talked about TK as non-compulsory. Is kindergarten going to be compulsory?
The law is not changing that, we've heard. The compulsory is at 6 and
Wow.
first grade.
Okay.
So
All right. See, that was an easy one, right?
that was an I'll give you that one.
Thank you. I'm done with my questions for now.
That's okay, Rob. Thanks.
All right. So let's move on to some other aspects.
Okay, so Jen's gone through all the stuff that you probably really came here for, and for the most part, if you're a teacher or early learning and care provider, those are the aspects that you really came for today. But we just wanted to let you know that your administrators are administrators of ELOP programs, and all of those are having to deal with a whole bunch of other aspects in terms of what it's going to look like to fully implement TK. So the types of things that we're looking at are classrooms, about do we have enough classrooms? And if we don't have enough classrooms, what do they have to look like? What is the square footage? What is the access to bathrooms? Do classrooms need to be retrofitted, or if they have the space, do they need to be built? And so those are some of the things that we're looking at. And also we're looking at playground space. So is that equipment developmentally appropriate, and how is recess going to work, the timing of recess, and meal times going to work for 4-year-olds in terms with your other grades. We are going to dive in this year into curriculum for TK, which is not just hanging out there waiting for us to find. And so we've been asking schools and districts what they're already using for kindergarten. And we've of course been looking at our early childhood world about what to start in terms of our curriculum review. We're going to give districts the opportunity, obviously, to participate in that review with us. There is also things to consider about transporting 4-year-olds, and also just the options in terms of funding. So obviously all of this is not free. And so how are we going to fund these things? What are the opportunities to be funded?
So before I move on to funding, I just wanted to say that if any of you on the call today want to drop in the chat what curriculum you're using, if you're a TK or K teacher, we can collect that and add that to our what we've been collecting.
So here's some of the funding just from the get-go. This is one of the bit of information that was released right at the beginning, and along with volume 1 of these planning documents. These are all of the grants that are out there currently. And so you can kind of just take a look at where they're providing funding for teacher development and around workforce, also around ELOP and facilities construction. Right now, they're taking a look at this bottom one, the Golden State Teacher Grant Program, to see if they should also include mental health professionals being able to get those dollars as well. So here's just a little look, and all of these links are live in the links that we gave you today. So a big one for us, that visual that Jen shared with you about if TK was standing in between their two friends, kindergarten and preschool, they would hold hands with preschool before they held hands with kindergarten. And so part of that is really about what do the assessments and observations look like. So in building a countywide plan, of course, we looked at best practices and what was suggested by the state. And so SCOE will be supporting those things that are considered best practice. So that will include countywide surveillance using a screener called ASQ. This is a screener that's been around for probably more than 40 years. It's evidence-based. It's used by pediatricians and in well child visits. It's Medi-Cal billable. We use it as part of our Help Me Grow program for Child Find, and we'll continue to do that. Currently, we're probably screening over 1,000 kids per year, and we hope to increase that. But ages and stages questionnaires are also done on every single student that comes through a California State Preschool and Head Start. So ASQs will be our screener for developmental delays. And then in the classroom, we'll be supporting the use of Desired Results Developmental Profile, or DRDP. Any of you that already have kiddos, young kiddos with IEPs have already done these before. They're a great observational tool, and they align directly with the Preschool Learning Foundations. And so it all kind of flows together really beautifully. And I think that we often find teachers who might be reluctant to do these and use these kinds of observational tools, but after they really start to use them, really start to love them a great deal. So we will be wholeheartedly supporting learning how to use the DRDP, how to enter DRDPs, how to get results from DRDPs, all things DRDPs. Okay. We'll also be using a subscale, an environmental scale, and the subscales, all the subscales within those, from a tool called ECHRS. And oftentimes when we talk about an environmental scale, we think about what does the classroom look like, and what's on the walls, or where are the tables, and where are the play areas, where's the blocks and the dramatic play areas, and those sorts of things. But the reality is we put a little picture here because an ECHRS has many, how many? I think there's 7. Yeah, 7. I can't believe I remember that. 7 subscales within ECHRS. And you'll see here, we took a little picture of some of the things that you wouldn't necessarily consider to be part of that if you weren't already in early learning and care. So for example, things like what's happening with personal care routines and what's happening with their language and reasoning. So it's also about the relationships and what's happening in that learning environment, not just what the actual environment looks like. We will, again, wholeheartedly be supporting all of you in using ECHRS and being able to rate classroom environments using ECHRS. We're also asked to use any sort of tools that have been developed to be able to look at kind of readiness coming out of TK and kindergarten classrooms. And so we will be collecting this for you. We'll start out small, countywide again, and then we'll try to go more broad. But we'll be using the kindergarten readiness snapshot, which has been used previously in Shasta County. At one point, we were collecting over, I think, like over 1,000 KRS snapshots per year. And so we'll be going back to that, but the difference this time will be we'll be collecting those for you, and those results will be available for districts, for schools, and for teachers. Okay, any questions about kind of some of those other aspects of implementing TK fully?
Yeah, just a quick one. Going back to the snapshot, it says North State Together is administering that. Will that continue?
So North State Together is the entity. First Five was able to, I don't know, kind of gift that over to North State Together for the care and feeding of that. And that's actually used in the entire region now. And so North State Together will be the keeper of the web-based tool and also deal with all of the data. So our partners at North State Together, which is actually housed at Shasta College, will continue to do that for us, but the collection will be done. That'll be a subcontract through SCOE to be able to get that collected in Shasta County this year. Any other questions?
I have a couple. Will you be offering any professional development coming up on those kind of things, like the DRDPs and ECHRs and those kind of things, or I even thought about like the TK monthly meeting like we used to do for kindergarten, where we'd meet over at the building and just kind of get together and talk about those things. Are you looking into something like that for us?
We will be doing all of those. So in just a minute, we'll be talking about all of the upcoming things that we already have planned.
Okay.
And we plan on, over the next 4 years, being able to have very robust kind of offerings between us and Shasta College to make sure that you can not only get those additional credits that you might need if you're an early childhood provider, but that we can also make sure that you know how to use these assessments and these tools and just kind of get the extra support that you need. So absolutely, I think it's Lisa that's asking me that question.
Yeah.
Yes, 100% yes. So
Okay.
this year, I want to say that it'll probably be our slowest year in terms of support, but I think even in that, I think you're going to find that you're going to get quite a bit of support offering this year. And we'll talk about some things that are already planned at the end of this presentation.
Okay. And the KRS, is that the app that we used? It's been a while that I used it. Was when it first came out and I was part of that program. It was a few years ago, but will that be something we'll get access for that app so that we are able to use that as well? Or
it'll be collected for you. So we're going to have some opportunities for you all to collect it, some stipends for you all to be able to collect it, and then equally so an opportunity for us to come in and collect it if you don't want to.
okay.
So we're looking at what that might look like for this year, but yes, we're going to give you access if you want access to have those results for all of your students. And this year we're going to be looking at being able to look at it coming into TK and K.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Well, if you've just joined us, and you haven't done it already, if you drop your name, your school or organization and grade into the chat, I would really appreciate that. That's how we're taking roll, so to speak, to use the classroom vernacular. So we've talked a lot now about what the state is requiring, what CDE is asking of us. Let's talk a little bit about what has been happening in Shasta County over the last several months. So we estimate that there's about 1,817 4-year-olds in Shasta County. We've been working with 22 elementary school districts and 4 charter schools so far to create one plan, one Shasta County-wide UPK implementation plan. And this is a timeline of what we've been doing since the plan was released in December. I should say the planning template was released in December. So we organized, we were talking to folks, administrators of the LEAs, that, hey, this is coming. When it came out in December, we immediately convened a work group, and we held our first work group meeting in January, got everybody oriented, started sharing all of our resources. In February, we started collecting some baseline information from the LEAs about what are their facilities like? What are the teacher qualifications? Where, like, when we think about all these things that are moving and changing, where are we? Where do we need to go? How do we bridge that gap? So we submitted for a teacher residency capacity grant. And we started doing site visits. So several of us here at Early Childhood Services went out to local elementary schools and charters to kind of lay our eyeballs on that site and talk with folks about what might be the best organization for the classrooms, given that you're basically adding a whole new grade. In March, and actually this is March through the end of April, we began collecting input on what the state calls focus areas. And their focus areas in the UPK implementation template that ask about, and I'll show you in detail in a little bit, but we started collecting that information from the districts. We also created a parent survey, and we released that through districts and through some of our preschool providers to get information from parents to not only educate them about the changes that are coming in TK, but also to ascertain, to really get their thoughts on when their child is 4, if their child is not 4 already, when their child is 4, what might they choose? Will they choose TK or will they choose CSPP if they're qualified? So really getting that parent input and about what kinds of extended learning opportunities do you need or would you take advantage of? And we're still analyzing the results of that survey. We had some really great responses, which is really, as a data person myself, I was very pleased. We also at the beginning of April, the Office of Public School Construction released or opened up the window to apply for the TK and kindergarten full day facilities grant, where the school districts could apply for funds to either build or retrofit facilities and the environment. And so we, much like this whole process, we were a couple of steps ahead. So we said, hey, let's get everybody in a room and do a TA session and get some questions and some answers. And we did that. In May, the month we just closed out of, at the beginning of May, we got a draft countywide plan out to all of the LEAs who had participated, and they began presenting it to their school boards. We conducted some classroom tours where we set up, Shasta College participated, and then we had 4 of our CSPP classrooms, and we opened it up to TK and K teachers and preschool teachers. Basically, if you want to come see what a developmentally appropriate classroom looks like for 4-year-olds, here's 6 opportunities over 2 days to do that. And then we held the in-person forum a couple of weeks ago now. So we're in June. June is where the rubber's hitting the road. We have to present the plan to our county board. Certifications have to be submitted to CDE to say, all of the LEAs have to submit to say, we have talked about this plan, we've showed this plan to our board, and they know what's going on. And then we're also planning for a TK boot camp that you're going to hear about a little later. So I talked about the focus areas. These are all, this is what the plan includes. The plan includes projected enrollment for each LEA individually and the county as a whole, a little bit about our vision and coherence for what UPK, countywide UPK implementation looks like. We have to talk about how we're engaging the community and parents and other partners in UPK. So that could include not just the ELOP program options, but also, other preschool providers. We have to talk about workforce recruitment and professional development. We talked about some of the changes that are coming. So we had to spend some time really hashing that out, fleshing that out for the plan. Same is true with curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And then finally, facility services and operations. So you can see the plan is very comprehensive. The thing turned out to be, I don't know, with everything for all of the LEAs, it turned out to be about 156 pages so far. This was just a timeline that we followed. No need to really pay attention to it now. And we really kept everything organized and managed through a shared folder in our friend Google. Google Drive was the best. And rather than have people need to click around and try to figure out where things are, we created a master cheat sheet for them to see everything that we had talked about and access it lickety split. And so here I just want you to know that the County Office of Education also has to do a plan. We have to do a plan, not just a countywide plan for implementation. That's what the LEAs are doing. We have to do a plan on top of that that says we are here to support this countywide approach. We're making sure we are providing the technical assistance and everything needed so that this UPK system is cohesive, it's coordinated, it's quality, and that children and families have access. All right, other items and upcoming events. Joy, take it away.
Okay, Here it is. I mean, this one's pretty easy, right? So this is not put on by us, but there is an early math symposium for those of you that might be interested in June. And we've put the link here for you already. And this is one of the things that we'll do beyond the stuff that we offer. We'll make sure that you know of all the other things that are available to you. And then we are going to have a boot camp. You can register now already. We have quite a few people registered. It's going to be on August 2nd. It's the full day. It's going to be at SCOE's Professional Development Center. And you can see some of the things here. Actually, Lisa was just asking about these, we'll be going over assessment and observation tools. We'll be going over that ECHRs and environments and what they should look like. We'll be looking at what types of curriculum are out there, and then you'll be getting a bunch of classroom swag too. So please sign up if you're interested for this transitional kindergarten boot camp. And then another exciting thing that's happening is, so this is essentially an SEL curriculum for early childhood and a PBIS for young children that doesn't have kind of token economy systems and extrinsic kind of things that we know are a bit developmentally above what we see for TK students. And we're excited because we have been a site for Teaching Pyramid, and we are going to get to work with West Ed to be a Teaching Pyramid pilot site to watch this go up into the early grades. So this year, over the next year, you'll be able to get 8 credit units if your classroom and your school would like to be a part. We can do this for pre-K, TK, K, and first grade. And so if you're interested in being part of our pilot for Teaching Pyramid, we would love to have you. We'll make sure that you hear more about it as we know more. We are going to have a co-teaching professional learning series, which is really exciting because many of us are expected to co-teach, but nobody ever tells us anything other than, hey, here's this other person that you have to figure things out with. So we're really excited to bring co-teaching. This is going to be in the fall. And then that's it. That's it. Those are the things that we already have planned. And so we're excited to already start on the road of beyond helping build a countywide plan. We're really excited to be able to help you actually implement the plan well.
So with that, we are 5 minutes early. So for those of you who thought, are we really going to be out by 5? That's up to you. We have 5 minutes for questions. And of course, we'll stay if anybody wants to stay after if they have more. What questions do you have for us? Everybody wants out by 5.
Okay, you're done.
All right.
Mute yours.
Thank you, everybody.
This is Kate. I have a couple questions. Should I put them?
We can hear you, Kate.
Thank you. So I think that just any and all clarification that you can get on the expanded learning part, and I know that other schools that are going to be running this 9-hour day and intersessions, the more clarification we can get earlier. We're just, we're in the office talking about, man, how are we going to get, we're already having staffing challenges. How are we going to get staff not only there, but get those 24 units by the fall of 23? And just the more information we get, the earlier, the faster we can start to figure out how to address some of those challenges that we can see.
We'll submit these right away.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you guys doing this for all of us who missed it last time.
Yeah, happy to do it.
Well, so I have a quick question. I was approached by Trinity because they finally realized, they have a year to get these 24 units. And so I emailed the state to ask if maybe worksite learning units could count. We have a really robust mentor teacher program. And I was thinking, maybe if we could use, for example, the DRDP courses in CECO, because the nice thing about worksite learning is you set your own learning objectives. So if you don't know Teaching Pyramid and that's what you really want to focus on, then you can take a course in that and get credit. If you don't know DRDP, if you don't know ECHRs, you could get credit through really just doing it in your work. And then we could pay a mentor teacher maybe to work with you on environments or, you know, whatever it might be. So they emailed me back kind of in a confusing answer, because they said if it's offered by an accredited institution of higher education and it counts toward a certificate or a degree, then it's included in those 24 units. At Shasta College, we do not accept worksite learning as units for the degree. We offer them because they're required for the permit and you know, you have to have experience, but so I've put it out to our ECE counselor to see what her take on it is. But what I'm hoping is that we can really get people, you can take it up to 8 units for a maximum of 16. So we could knock out quite a few. The other thing we're looking at is using the teacher performance assessment that's being piloted. They have 3 cycles. One looks at engaging and supporting all students. One looks at curriculum planning and assessment. One looks at working with families. And we were thinking if it was almost like a credit by exam, they could do the assignment for those 3 cycles. We would assess them and then sort of sign off on probably 6 or 9 units worth of coursework. So I just wanted to let you know we're kind of working on a bunch of different things to speed this up and get this going, but nothing has quite been figured out completely yet. We're also thinking, you know, there's some classes we would love TK and K teachers to take, like guidance in adult-child relations, ECE 52, really, really good. We don't do the pyramid exclusively, but we do social emotional environment, we do interactions. So I've had a lot of credentialed teachers come back and take that class and really, really get a lot out of it. And then the other thing was maybe some other like credit by exam. We're thinking they already have child development. I think every credentialed teacher has a child development course. So we could just kind of credit them for that. So we're just trying
okay.
we're trying to kind of piece it all together, and, you know, really acknowledge the skills and abilities they already have, and then supplement for the things that we really want them to have.
So this might actually be a question for Kate then. Is that okay if I ask? With me, I got my AA degree in early childhood education in like the 90s, like a long time ago. And I've been teaching kindergarten for a really long time as well. So I would be interested in taking like those kind of classes, like you're saying, the EC classes, just to refresh. And just like when I did the tour, it was like, oh, bring me back to preschool land, because I haven't been there in like, you know, 10, 15 years. So, but those kind of things, is that something like, I don't know how that works. If you already have like all these EC units, can you come back and take these other, or take a class again? Like it would be, you know, benefit me to come back and take these EC classes, but I already have them. So what is your thought on that?
Well, I'd love to look at your transcript and see what you have and what you don't, because we may have added some courses that that you didn't take because we didn't have them when you were here in the 90s. So it would be, I really want to do it individually. I've already hooked up with our counselor, Donna Pratt, who is willing to review any transcripts of anyone, you know, that is trying to piece together what they need. We're really taking it on a case-by-case basis. Even when TK came around, we knew this was coming, and we didn't want to say, you have to take this. We didn't think we'd have that many people to really create a whole program just for TK teachers. And we also wanted them to have some choices. What did they feel like they wanted based on what we offer? So we really are just hoping to individualize it for people.
Yeah, because I know that that's the one thing when it says 24 EC units for people who have, you know, been teaching and they're going back. It's like, well, what EC units? And I'm like, oh, you got to take the curriculums. You got to take like the play ones. You got to be able to see what it's like to, you know, do developmental stuff. But it's kind of hard when they just say, oh, just 24 EC units.
Just take it. Yeah, I know it's confusing, but it does give you some options. For example, we've added an advanced curriculum that's really based on the foundations and the frameworks. It's really focused on UPK. So
it sounds like
that
there's
might be
classes
something
I can take.
Yeah, we don't want you taking intro to curriculum. You know, you're already teaching, so that seems like a waste of your time. But maybe advanced curriculum would be a good choice.
Okay, thank you.
5 o'clock, I'm going to stop the recording, just so that we can have it at about an hour. And but if anybody wants to hang out and ask some more questions, we can do that too. Otherwise, I'm going to say goodbye.